Hours, the Electoral Commission has been recollating the election result for Nsawam Eduejiri, Akwetia, Suhum, and Fantiakwa North constituencies. 3 of the constituencies have been resolved, but of course, not without chaotic scenes.
Leave our section. With due respect, you are not part of us. You are not part of us. You are not supposed to be here. Go away. Go away.
After the NPP won Akwetia and Fantiakwa North constituencies in the early hours of Thursday, it took the EC returning officer 12 more hours to declare the Suhum constituency results at 9 p.m. and under heavy police protection.
I hereby declare Frank Asiadu Nakwen as MP-elect for Suhum constituency 2024 election.
Here's Majority Leader Alexander Penyumakin's reaction to a third victory.
We thank God that when security was properly provided and the EC was firm, we've all seen transparently what we have achieved.
But the NDC's Peter Boama Otokuno says they will not accept the results of Akwetia.
When she called that they should stop, they had finished and they claimed they have declared. And that results declaration is illegal, it's unfounded, it's non-existent, and so the Akwetia is still outstanding.
It's past 1 a.m. here at the Collation Center. The EC, together with the political parties, are still divided on whether to accept the results from over 80 polling stations in the Nsawam Eduejiri constituency, which have some errors. Frank Anodompre, who is the MP and candidate in the election, is furious but firm he will win the seat.
See, I see something happening. People have pin sheet and yet they hold on to it and say, I don't have, just to prolong the declaration of the result. This is most unfortunate. I have won this election. Why are they dragging the matter? What is this?
After the long wait, the EC has postponed its final decision on Nsawam Eduejiri to 6 a.m. Friday morning. James Savaji, Police Training School, Accra.
Well, we're getting straight into our big stories, and exit polls indicate that the economy and jobs, unemployment, remain key issues that triggered a presidential sweep for the National Democratic Congress in an election that appeared too close to call by some, but it has now left some pollsters scratching their heads, relooking their methodologies and recalculating the fractions. We're getting into that. There's this man who literally put his head on the chopping board because he stuck his head out and said, his neck out and said, this is what I think. And his results, well, came true. He came out unscathed. I'm talking about Mussa Dankwah of Global Info Analytics, Executive Director. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to have you. How do you feel?
I feel vindicated and also excited about what the guys did, the guys in the field, our volunteers, our team of officers. I think they've put a lot into it to get what we got today.
All right. You had been projecting, and it was so close because you look at the Ashanti region, for example. You were talking about the MPP securing 69%, but if you look at some of the other aggregated figures, 65%.
We give them 66%.
66%?
Yes, that's our projection for them.
Which is pretty close to what the MPP actually got. And some people said they were outraged. They said you were concocting figures. But generally, when you look at the exit polls, what picture did it paint for you vis-a-vis what you told us?
You know, when we started getting the exit poll results in from 8 o'clock in the morning, what I was doing was to compare the exit polls to the opinion polls we've done prior to that. And once they were matching within 1%, 2% margin of error, I knew we would come out clean. And clearly what we see is that, look, contrary to what people were saying about MP people didn't come out to vote, they came out to vote because everybody else suffered the same decline.
Which I have also supported. I have said that you don't assume, people are saying, oh, MPP supporters, there was a decline of 40%. I'm saying, how do you know? 18 million people registered. You can't think that only you suffered the decline because you moved from a certain number of votes in 2020 to 4 million plus in 2024.
It's not backed by the data. In fact, when you look at the data we have, close to 20% of people who went for Nanado in 2020 switched their vote to John Mahama.
Close to 20%?
Yes, nationally. And in the swing areas, it's about 30%.
Wow. You're saying that as far as the comparative from 2020 to 2024 is concerned, 20% of those who voted for Nanado switched and voted for John Mahama.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to the swing areas where you can't really tell, 30% made the switch and voted for John Mahama.
Yes.
How did you come by those information?
Because we asked the voters who were voting, who did they vote for in the last election? So we ran a triangulation, what we call a crosstab, to see those who voted for Nanado in 20, who are they voting now? We saw that, look, this huge number have switched their votes.
Wow. So is that a post-election poll? Or is
no, it was done on the very day they were voting.
On the very day?
Yes. Once you voted, and we check your finger, you voted, then we'll engage you in a conversation.
I see. This is interesting. But generally, did you find any surprises in there, even per your projections? Were there any surprises? You look at the Ahafo area, which has a certain voting pattern. I will not even go to Ashanti first. You look at the Ahafo area. Western fell to the NDC, and that was a bit of a shocker. Eastern was close. I mean, it was, as some New Patriotic Party aficionados would say, unhealthily close. Even in the areas where the MPP was winning, like Savannah, like Ashanti, like Eastern, it was unhealthily close. For the first time, you see the NDC getting, 679,000 plus votes in the Ashanti region. In the Savannah region, where the northeast region, Savannah is rather John Mahama. In the northeast region, where the vice president hails from, it was just some 30 or 40,000 votes. Same in the eastern region. What accounted for that?
If you look at our projections, I think the poll numbers 2 weeks before the last poll that we did, we had Bono and Ahafo under Mahama's column. Remember, I said on the good day, Mahama could win 13 regions, and then on the bad day...
You did say that.
I said, that was exactly what happened in the election. What we saw was that in the Eastern region, which I said much earlier, that MPP was focused on the Ashanti region, but Eastern could give them a shocker. And indeed, we saw how close Eastern was. If you look at what happened in the Eastern region, clearly there were a lot of people who were voting for Mahama that had previously voted for Nanado. So they switched the vote. Not that they just came out and switched the vote. So it wasn't just like people didn't turn up. They did turn up, but the vote didn't go where it's supposed to be going. Now, if you look at Ahafo, it was quite revealing that what we said was going to happen was what happened, but just that in the final model we did, we discounted Ahafo and Bono and gave them to Baumia because of the latest poll we did there. With hindsight, I think we shouldn't have done that. We should have stuck with the average that we had, which was clearly in the column of Mahama. But look, the economy was the issue. It was the economy. Then you come to jobs, then education. What we saw in the campaign was that the vice president was pivoting on education, but there were no numbers in education. The numbers were on jobs and the economy, and that was left free for Mahama to ride on.
I see. So in terms of disgruntled voters and the impact of the low voter turnout, would you say the MPP was more affected? Per what you're telling me now.
The region with the highest apathy was Bono East.
Bono East.
That was NDC stronghold. So the numbers were just all over the place. But if you look at the quantum of vote that should have come from Ashanti regions, clearly yes. But it didn't mean that when they come out, they will vote in a different direction because they will vote proportionally the way these guys are voting. Probably Mahama would have done 30%, not 33%, if the numbers had come out. So it wouldn't have made a lot of difference to MPP's chances in the 2024 elections.
Now, I mean, if you look at gender and all of that, the voting patterns, they paint an interesting picture. But there's something else that interests me. The performance of Alan Trebating and Nana Kwame Bediako. You had been projecting that Nana Kwame Bediako would get more votes than Alan Trebating. That indeed turned out to be the case. But how shocking was that for you in the Ashanti region with the numbers? Because this is where predominantly we saw that those two would make an impact and likely claw away votes from the NPP especially. But the impact wasn't that much, though.
You know,
Nana Kwame got more of those votes.
I've said that earlier, that the performance of Alan Trebating and Bediako eventually will be determined by how voters want to take a risk. Now, people wanted to take a risk, but they realized that this risk was too risky to be taken. In the sense that if you vote for Alan and Bediako in mass, and they get numbers and Muhammad doesn't go to 50% plus one, there could be trouble. And on that basis, I think they decided on the last minute that it wasn't worth the risk. So they all went for Muhammad. That is why Muhammad was outperforming the numbers we gave to him, because he was benefiting from the Alan and Bediako numbers. And remember, DMB's numbers stayed flat. Which means that he didn't benefit from those who were switching votes from Alan and Bediako, but they rather went to Muhammad.
I see. But the numbers, you projected that Alan and Cheddar would do better. They did not.
But remember I said to you that when you rely on the youth vote, you have the biggest challenge on your hand. How to get them out to vote. One thing saying that I'll vote for you, going there to vote for you is a different matter. So everywhere, globally, once the youth is behind you, you must move to a extent where you move them from their homes or from their comfortable laptops and devices to the polling station to vote. And I don't think they did.
I see. Beyond all of this, did you expect, because though you projected the 66% or so for the MPP, looking at the turnout as low as it was and all of that, did you expect the NDC to get close to 700,000 votes in the Ashanti region?
Yes, I did.
Per the 30-something percent that you have projected for them?
NDC votes, people who vote for NDC, they are a reliable bloc in Ashanti region. They won't be affected by lower apathy. Right. So they would come out regardless of what the numbers would be in Ashanti region. But that would have put them around 30%, not 33%. If they were heavy turnout on the MPP side. But I think another thing that we are making a mistake in Ashanti region is that we are assuming that most people there are MPP voters. There are a good number of people there who are floating voters, right? Who stayed at home as well. And if and
it's also a bit of a melting pot. People come from different parts of the country and stay there.
Absolutely. So look, if those who were floating had come out, it could have been worse for MPP.
Would have been worse.
Yes, because in the exit poll, Mama was getting about 58% nationally, and in the swing regions, about 65% of floating voters. So if they had come out in their numbers, that number would have broken the way it broke for Muhammad. It would probably be a lot worse.
In terms of the parliamentary in the Ashanti region, the NDC is looking at about 10 seats, thereabouts. How shocking is that? I mean, they've never gone beyond four seats. Was that a shocker for even you?
Absolutely. I didn't expect them to do more than what they have 4.
They were projecting, hoping that they would break the 4 and maybe go to about 6, 7, but they got 10.
Yes. I mean, it tells you the dynamics have changed in the Ashanti region in terms of parliamentary numbers. And also, you see, when you have apathy on your side, and parliamentary seats are quite decided by a few number of votes. Once your people decide not to come, and people say it will be our own vote, certainly the NDC guys will come out to vote. And that could make a huge difference. And indeed, what we've seen in the parliamentary numbers is as a result of that dynamics.
Now, if you go to the other stronghold, which is the Volta region for the NDC, it was an obliteration. It was disastrous because they had projected about 500,000 votes. I remember speaking to Richard Ahiagba, and he was talking about Kitu South and the work they had done there. But on voting day, it was completely, it was an annihilation.
Yeah.
Now, they lost the Hohoi seat. John Peter Ameu has lost that seat. And the projection they made, they got only about 11% of that projection. In fact, the vote was such a drop from what even Nanado secured in the last election of about 100,000.
Some thousand, yes. It's quite, It wasn't surprising because if you look at the approval of the president in the voter region, it was terribly bad. Very bad.
It was terrible.
Terrible in the voter region. And that would result in the kind of numbers that they got. But I was surprised at the steep of the decline. It was quite significant.
Yeah.
Very steep.
And then if you just want to look at this, looking at the general parliamentary picture, I'll come later to dynamics like religion and whether they played a role and all of that, per the analysis you made. But this is like a 2/3 majority. This has not happened in, I mean, you'd probably have to go back to Nkrumah to see something as
last scale.
I mean, similar to this. Did it take you by surprise?
I don't think it did, because I think I was talking to somebody and I said to them that if NDC invests and believes in what we are telling them, in public, they could win 2/3 majority. And they were laughing at me.
They were laughing at you?
Yeah, even the NDC were laughing at me.
Yeah, because members of the NDC said that, look, they were confident they would win and that they would secure a majority. In fact, they claimed that in 2020, there were some shenanigans which may have led to this hung parliament. And they felt that this time they would definitely increase, but even they could not have looked into a crystal ball and forecast that they would have this kind of majority.
When we made a call on Domi Kwabena, some said I was mad, frankly.
What was the call on Domi Kwabena?
That they were going to lose Domi Kwabena.
What were the specific figures you were looking at?
In fact, we were looking for NDC to win about 52%.
52%?
Yes, in the final poll. And the exit poll was almost the same number in the exit poll for Domi Kwabena.
That is Akurugu in Domi Kwabena.
Yes.
And of course, that is still being contested by Michael Quay Jr.
He said he wants to go to court.
Yes, and of course, the High Court would be the place.
So I wasn't surprised. Look,
but you were not surprised.
No, we called many controversial seats that nobody thought NDC had a chance. Tema Central, we called it long before it happened. Tema West, we called it. I
mean, these are strongholds of the NDC.
Yes.
Tema East, Tema West, Tema Central, strongholds. Though one of them, I think, had switched green in the last election.
Yes, that's Tema East.
Tema East.
Okankwe South, we called it. Ablekuma West, we called it. Even Ablekuma North, we called it. We called Ayawaso Central, we called it. We called Ayawaso West Wagon. And we called so many of them. In fact, in the Western region, we called Eviak, we called Kwesiminting, we called Chama, we called Escado. In fact, what flipped on our side was that we were expecting Tadi to flip, but Tadi stayed blue.
But second D,
we didn't expect it
to,
but it went green. So that was the sort of shocks that we had. Kakwan Soyim, he was long gone.
Wow.
And so I think the numbers were too good that people didn't even believe it.
Let's talk about two places. Yendi, the home of the former vice president,
I didn't see
Aliyu Mahama. You didn't see that coming?
I didn't see that, no. I didn't see that coming.
Because on the ground, it appeared Farouk Aliyu Mahama had quite a base. So that was a shocker.
That was a shocker. But you see, the signs were there. We did a poll, I think sometime in July. And Mahama was leading in Yendi about 52% or so, 52%. And people said that was madness. But I thought that was the early signal that we were getting. And we didn't believe in that. But with hindsight, I think we should have done much more work there to unravel what was going on there.
And that is where skirt and blouse voting comes. Because sometimes when you see those signals, it means that it could affect the parliamentary candidate. In this instance, we didn't see too much of skirt and blouse, did we?
No.
Not too much. People voted, and that's why you have such a wide gap in the parliament and also in the main election. Because people stuck to, if they were voting here,
they're not going anywhere else. And I think the state of parliament now didn't help people to do skirt and blouse. They've seen how MPs are struggling in getting their bills through the parliament. We don't want Mahama to go to parliament with that kind of slim majority. So they wanted to be very emphatic.
Let's look at a place like Nsawamwe Duajiri, Frank Anodombre.
I was shocked.
You were shocked?
Yes.
He's also one who is contesting.
Prior to that, I think 2 weeks before that election, we did a poll in Nsawamwe Duajiri. And he was extremely performing well. Maybe that extreme was probably...
Maybe you ended up speaking to one side?
Not necessarily, no. You see, when you go into a place and there's goodies going on, sharing goodies, the people tend to blend in, thinking you're coming to share something. So they will blend to support the party that is giving the money.
Did you see any money sharing or anything?
No, we have exit poll showing that the money was shared.
Money was shared?
Yes.
In Sawan Medwaji?
All over the country, including some areas. Yes, there were inducements across the country.
Ewutu Senya, I believe, East.
I saw it coming.
Mavis Hawakums.
I saw it coming.
You saw it coming?
Yes. Because, you see, before, in July, she was leading quite comfortably. And she was being helped by about...
That was about 4 or 5 months to the poll.
Yes.
Right.
And then, surprisingly, she was being helped by about 30% of NDC voters. She was quite popular among NDC people.
What happened?
I don't know. Apparently, she's very good, very kind. So she was winning minds and hearts. But I think when the attack on the PC occurred, the Dankwah occurred, there was some violence, and that led to her arrest. And then she began to lose the NDC base. And then when she started sharing and branding products with a picture and DM's picture on them, she lost the floating voters, and the race became dead heat. And at that point, I said, 3 weeks before the election, dead heat means you are losing.
Wow. And she lost.
She lost, yes.
And then there was that subsequent shooting incident and all that. We'll not get into that. We're not here for security-related matters. We are here for election-related matters. Before we talk about Second D, Ejapa Mensah, and Efutu Afenyo Markin won.
Yes.
And it was to be expected as well,
yes.
per your projections.
Yes.
But I want us to talk about Ayawaso West Wogon. You had already forecast that Lydia Sarah Malhassan was going to face challenges there, and she did. But do you think, you know that bit that came out about giving food and others to security officials during the special voting? Do you think, though you may not have conducted a poll, do you think it impacted the results that she got?
You know, I could even go to the exit poll and see people's responses to that in the constituency. But you see, Ayawaso West Wogon is an elite constituency, largely. You have a very good size of the constituency being people affluent, and those kind of things don't work in those areas. But we've also found evidence that people who use money in the campaign, the last days of the campaign, lost the election.
Those who tried to induce people with money within the last period, the latter days.
Yes, they lost the elections.
Let's look at the core issues that we saw that impacted the election. The economy, and then employment-related issues, unemployment. How much of a role, per what you saw right before the elections, did these factors play in the results we've got?
Look, I would say over 70% of the outcome we saw in this election relates to jobs and the economy.
Over 70%?
Yes. So when you have this issue burning and people struggling, I mean, there's no way you could win the election using the 30%, which is other matters and education.
Wow.
People were just going to vote based on their pockets, and they did.
I interacted in the course of the elections with Bright Simmons, and he said this administration had been one of the most tone deaf that he had experienced. And people also spoke about arrogance and all that. How much of a factor did those play? Did your polls...
No, we didn't touch on
any
those.
No,
we didn't touch on those. We were quite focused on key things that are... I know sometimes, certainly, those things would play a role. Because when it comes to the middle class and the upper class, your posture in the campaign and how you engage with people in the media really push some people off. It may be a reason why they will just make it easy for them to just vote you out, but may not be the main reason that they are voting you out.
I see. And then religion. Was that a factor? Interestingly, I mean, I think you mentioned that it wasn't going to be a major issue, but I spoke to a few people who would say, and I would not repeat what they said because I found it to be biased, but some would say, oh, I don't want this side because of this and all that. But I felt it would be a tangential issue. It would be a borderline issue. It wouldn't be a really reflective. What did you see? What was your reading? And after the polls, what is your reflection on that?
One, the Muslims were not going to be voting based on religion. The fact that you're one of them doesn't mean that you get their vote automatically. No, it won't happen. But there were evidence that some of the Christians were not comfortable with the Muslim president. That is a fact. I mean, we can deny it. It's not so much for the Catholics, the Methodists, the Anglican, and the Presbyterians. It was much of an issue for the evangelical groups, which is the Pentecostals and the charismatic churches. They have issues somehow with DMB, and that was going to impact on how they vote. because there are so many issues with his economic jobs, there were enough reasons not to vote for him than just to use the religion. But for those who were caught in between him and John, I think those little things made a difference.
Right. Did ethnicity play any role in this?
No, in fact, let's go back to the exit poll on religion.
Right.
Among Christians, Muhammad won 58%.
The exit polls.
Exit polls.
Right.
Bawumia 36%. When it comes to the Muslims, Muhammad got 60% of the Muslim vote. Bawumia 33%.
In other words, even among Muslims.
No, it didn't work.
Though Dr. Bawumia is rather the Muslim, he lost more votes there to Muhammad than even among the Christians.
Yes. Now, if you look at the Christian denominations across board, Muhammad won in every group. Among the Catholic, Muhammad won 5-7, Muhammad 38. Among the Methodists, 56-37. Among the Presbyterian, 62-34. Among the Anglican, 56-36. Among the Pentecostals, 55-38. Among the charismatic churches, 59-32. Other churches, 60-34. And then you have the SDA, Muhammad 57, Muhammad 34.
SDA?
Yes.
There were issues about voting.
And among those Jehovah's Witnesses who voted, Muhammad won 50%.
I think it was a Jehovah's Witness,
yes.
rather.
Yes.
He won by what?
50 to 33% among the Witnesses.
Wow. I see.
So it just across every block of...
all the strata.
All the strata. When it comes to the Muslim side, the Islamic sect, among the Sunnah is 65-28 for Muhammad. Among the Shia,
they are the largest, largest sect.
And among the Shia is 5-2 to Muhammad, 39 to Bawumia. And among the Tijaniya, it was 69%. That is shocking to me.
Wow.
He normally does well in the Tijaniya group. This time around, he really flopped, 69-23. Ahmadiyya, 5-7 to 20-35. And then others, 54-40.
I mean, every way, it's like looking at an object and turning it. It's like 3D. Every angle you turn it out
was same.
At the NPP was bleeding.
Yes. The signs were there.
What? I was saying that the NPP was bleeding. But anyway, now, in terms of, you've spoken about religion. In terms of ethnicity, what's the picture?
The story is the same. Muhammad won in every ethnic group except in the Mande. Mande is made up of the Fulani as well, where it was tied, 44% apiece. And then among the...
And you could also read into that.
Oh, yes.
Because of Dr. Bawumia's wife and all of that. So you could read into that and say that there was some support there
strongly
because of his wife.
And then the other group he won was the Guru ethnic group. He had 50% and Muhammad 45%. The rest of the ethnic group was just a whitewash. Even the accounts, Muhammad 51, Bawumia 40%.
Is there any other factor you think we should look at beyond, I mean, we've looked at the economy, unemployment, we've looked at ethnicity, religion. How about party affiliations? How did they pan out? Those who were hardcore MPP and those who were hardcore NDC, how did the voting go?
Right, okay, let's look at the responses, how people voted by party affiliation. Right. Among people who were MPP, 13% of MPP voters voted for Muhammad.
13% of MPP voters
voted for Muhammad. So those who were coming to vote for JD Bawumia, they didn't vote for him in that way. They went for Muhammad, 13%. MPP voters.
That means if you are even looking at the exit polls from 2020 and looking at the different dynamics, the numbers,
yes,
and factoring in the low voter turnout and looking at how 13% would play, that would be massive.
It's massive.
Massive.
It's massive. Remember, about 41% of the respondents were MPP.
So the writing was on the wall.
On the wall.
How about the NDC? How did they vote?
NDC, 88% of them went for Muhammad.
So 12%, what
went
happened
somewhere.
to those?
8% went to Bawumia, and 3% went to other candidates.
So while the NDC lost 8% of its core base,
MPP lost
13%. Yes. That's a gap of another 5%. And even that can change the tide of an election.
Absolutely. Now, if you look at the floating voters,
and that's where I was about to go next.
65%
65% of the floating voters.
Mahama.
Wow. And the floating voters, in terms of the party affiliations, we were looking at about 15% of floating voters.
Yes.
And 65% of those 15% voted for John Mahama.
Yes.
This was a disastrous election.
No, it was. And we said earlier that, look, he needs to improve his standing among floating voters. If he continues to hemorrhage in the polls among them, that could be disaster.
If you look at even the current figures, there's been talk about the fact that projections from the NDC and also some of what has been seen, because there are some constituencies where collation is still being done. If you go to Tessanot, the police station today, for example, some of that will be done there. The projections are that John Mahama, the EC declared 56.55% and 41+% for Dr. Bawumia. But the suggestion is that at the end of the day, it will be 58+% for John Mahama and about 40% or so for Dr. Bawumia. What is your take on that?
Remember, we were here some time back, and I said the gap between Mahama and DMB could be 2 million. Remember that?
Right.
On this particular platform. So the gap could be 2 million if care is not taken. So we're projecting between 1.6 million and 2 million differentials by the time we finish this election. So that is what we're going to see. Even if the turnout comes down, the margin still remains the same.
So you were suggesting that they could lose the election. And I think I do recall you said something like that. Almost 2 million votes.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we're seeing.
Absolutely. And that was
at the end of the day, you think it will inch towards 2 million?
Yes, it will. It will.
I see. But this verdict that the Ghanaian people have delivered, some also contend that it was more a reflection on Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and not so much on Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Do you agree?
No, this could be speculative.
Speculative.
Because you don't have data to support that. And I like to speak to data. I remember during the October poll, we asked whether the choice you are making is for a candidate or against a candidate. Just to see whether they are voting for Mahama because they like him or voting for Mahama because they don't like the alternative that they have been given. Maybe with time, we'll go back and ask voters what really drove the decision to vote the way they did. But here, I can't speculate.
All right. We've looked at Ayawaso West Wuogon. Let's look at Second D, where Ejapa Mercer lost. What happened?
I think the people were being...
Because you forecast that Takrade would flip and Second D would remain.
Yes, because...
But Second D rather flipped and Takrade remained.
In the polls, he was close to about 60% of the support he was getting at the time. And I believe the voters were just being cunning with their true voting time. But normally, you don't see that kind of huge swing from a very strong winning position to a losing position. It means people have been a bit cagey with their responses in that constituency. And if I had that kind of suspicion, we would have used a different way of triangulating the result and see whether they were lying to us or not. But there was no sign that they were lying. Rather, we were expecting that Tadi could fall, because Tadi, the gentleman had lost about 40% of MPP support. In his own base, he's lost ground. So we couldn't see how he was going to survive with that fall of support.
But he did.
But he did. He did, yes.
Do you recall what the margin was?
I can't remember.
Was it slim?
I can't remember the margin.
We'll have to check on the Takrade situation. Then there's Ifutu, where Alexander Afenyo-Markin, he came through.
No, we didn't expect him to lose. In fact,
he's strong in that constituency.
Yes. There were two strong candidates in the central region who were doing above 56%. And it was him and Atufosin. Nobody else in the region was doing that level. So I didn't expect him to fall.
Okay. Now, let's look at this. I would like us to look at the major losses, right? And maybe a few factors that could have accounted for those, from Ablekuma, Northwest, and all of that, Ursula, to other places. But before we do, your polls seemed to move away from what other pollsters were saying. I mean, the EIU and Fitch supported what you were saying, but even they were more moderate. But your polls seemed to be a shocker. People felt, no, this can't be. You said that even some of the NDC members felt, wow. I mean, you're projecting that we'll win all these places. They couldn't believe it.
No, they couldn't.
The MPP said you were fake. You were a fake pollster, that your methodology was faulty. Dr. Mahama of the Vice President's office, and some people said, no, this couldn't be. Ben Efson made a projection of more than 50% for the MPP. Professor Smart Sapon made a projection that the MPP will get about 49 point something, Mahama about 44 or 45%, and so there would be a runoff. It is your poll that has proven to be true. So in a way, you have won this polling battle for this season. But what do you think accounted for the disparities between your polls and these other polls?
I think they completely use a wrong sampling method.
Sampling method?
Yes.
Professor Smart Sapon sampled about 90-some, almost 100,000 people across all the constituencies of Ghana.
In the last two polls that we did, every week we were sampling 2,500, and we got the results right.
It's not about the numbers.
It's not about the numbers. It's about the science of the deployment of sample and the randomness. The randomness is very, very key. You can't say that, oh, I've interviewed an imam can bring 10 people with him to vote. So if imam is going right, they all go right. It doesn't work like that in politics. No. In social science, you could be right. But in politics, it doesn't.
Let's go back to the major losses. And for you, of course. I've mentioned a few of them, but the major losses and the factors that through your polls you had pointed to these losses likely happening. You can enumerate which ones you want to look at.
Look, let's look at the Birkum West, Birkum East, Sunyani West, Sunyani East. About 6 months ago, we said they were all going to fall. All of them. Bafo, and then Amea Chireme. It was clearly that in the MPP, they've lost confidence in their own people. Also, the economy was biting. So you're going to have a down ballot effect. When somebody votes for Mahama, he's likely going to vote for Mahama's candidate. So you can see that the sins of the father, I mean, the MPP's unpopularity affected everybody that is running on their ticket, including some of the good MPs. You know, for Patrick Brown to be where he is in terms of polling, it was shocking for me.
Right.
And I understand.
Because that constituency is also being contested now. And in fact, the other person has been declared, I think, the victor.
You know, some of this, what we've done is to go to the exit poll and see who actually won in the exit poll. And in all those places that we've seen, the exit polls had confirmed some of the results that had been published.
Wow. Hold for me. Let me bring in Dr. John Osai Kwapong. He's a CDD fellow, and he joins the conversation. Doc, good morning. Dr. Osai Kwapong, if you can hear me, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thanks for joining the conversation. First question. What we saw in the last election, I don't know how you feel about what we saw. Did you expect this kind of victory, both parliamentarily and, of course, presidentially, if you like?
No. And by the way, good morning to Mr. Mussa Dankwah as well. And if he would admit it publicly, every so often, I would reach out to him via WhatsApp, and I would say to him, what do you think about this race? What's your reading of the political temperature on the ground, right? Because I'm thinking he's in Ghana, he's much closer, and he's regularly conducting these polls. And he would give me some of his assessments, and he would say, my take on the state of the race hasn't changed. Then a poll would come out, or some other model will be revealed, and it would show that the race is a lot more competitive than he is showing. And then I'll reach out to him again, because at some point I used to say to myself, are we looking at an unconventional election where the vice president can actually squeak by with a really small margin of victory? Can he push this into a second round? Or overall, the NDC will still win this election, but it would be competitive. It will be close enough. So no, I personally didn't expect this margin of victory. And so as the results started coming in and I started looking at the numbers, one of the things I said to myself was, yes, Ghanaians may have been upset. If you look at some of the sentiments they were expressing, for example, in the Afrobarometer survey. But then I said to myself, nah, this is more than just being upset. This is like real anger at the ruling party, and they went all the way out to truly express that anger. But I honestly didn't expect the election results to look this way.
I see. But looking at the landslide, the nature of the loss, what picture does it paint for you?
For me, it is a strong disapproval of the blueprint of governance and politics that the ruling party served. That's my first reading of it. My second reading of it is that I know part of the MPP's narrative was the alternative is scary, but voters through this tell us that it is up to them to decide which alternative in our politics they find scary or not, which alternative they find acceptable or unacceptable. The third thing for me is that I don't think we take Ghanaian voters for granted, but I think Ghanaian voters are also showing us that they are a lot more sophisticated and a lot more nuanced than we would think. And I say that because I look at some of the last minute efforts of the ruling party around the various commissionings of infrastructure, for example. Besides that, if you look at the Global Info Analytics poll around inducements, if you look at Afrobarometer around inducements, if you look at the Codeo report around inducements, it also shows that those things don't really make a difference, right? That at the end of the day, voters they may even take your inducements, but would still express their true sentiments at the poll. And so if they've decided to vote against you based on how they're feeling about their personal living conditions, about the country's economic conditions, about the direction in which the country is going, about their perceptions of corruption, no inducements would change that attitude and how they have decided to vote. The last thing I would also mention is that, look, I've regularly drawn the attention of political parties to something that CDD Ghana picked up in one of their pre-election polls, going all the way back to 2016, which asked, what should you do if you are induced? And a strong number of people said, I will take the inducement, but I'll still vote the way I want to vote. But I guess for political parties, they also cannot do unilateral disarmament, right? That there's the fear that, well, if my opponent is going to induce and I don't, what if that inducement makes a difference? But I think this election is showing you that those inducements don't make a difference. In fact, if you look at the exit poll, one of the things that really surprised me was that 67% made up their mind who they were going to vote for more than about a year ago. So to think that many people had already decided, what difference is your inducement going to make?
And if you look at that low voter turnout, it's pretty problematic, especially when we also have rejected ballots accounting for what? About 239,000. That could actually account for a win in any election. 239,000. That is gargantuan. Where are we getting it wrong with that? Because on both these scores, the NCC was educating, the political parties were educating on how to vote so your ballot is not spoiled or rejected. And again, encouraging people to go out there. Doesn't look like it may have attained the full scale of results they expected. Your take?
Yeah, precisely. And I mean, like you said, think about if we go back to the election that the late Professor Tamils won against President Nana Addo. look at that margin of victory back then and look at the number of rejected ballots.
I mean, Time gave a victory of what, 20,000 thereabouts?
Yeah, I don't think it was more than 50,000, right? So to think that 239,000 ballots nationwide were rejected is still very concerning. I mean, I know the political parties put in effort to educate voters on how to cast their ballot. I know the NCC did some videos. Even the EC itself, did some video demonstrations of how to properly handle the ballot. And so it's still surprising to see that high number of rejected ballots. Maybe we need to look at the criteria we use in determining what a rejected ballot is. So one of the things that I said before the election was, if I properly cast the vote, but maybe in the folding of it, the ink spills just a little outside of that little box. If it doesn't show that, I tried voting for multiple candidates, for example, can we look at that ballot and still find it acceptable? But it will be a good exercise for the EC and the political parties to conduct on these rejected ballots, just to see what categories they fall into as a rejected ballot, and if there are some new rules that can be written around how we consider, or what we consider as a rejected ballot or not. In terms of voter apathy, for me, sometimes that is also a reflection of whether voters believe that an election makes a difference or not. So maybe they voted once, twice. They don't see any major changes in our governance architecture, in our economic conditions, in their own personal living conditions. So they may say to themselves, what difference is this going to make? I won't bother. It is also a reflection of, I voted this particular party because that is my political party. So in the case of the MPP, for example, one of my speculations is that I said to myself, if you are Dr. Bawumia, the support for e-levy, one district, one factory, for example, as shown in the AB survey, you could use that as a basis for continuing to make your case that, well, who is better placed then to continue with these policies that Ghanaians are saying must be continued. So I honestly thought that could make the ruling party a lot more competitive, but it looks like it still didn't make a difference, or it wasn't the kind of game changer that the ruling party thought it was going to be. And also think about the number of ads, political ads that I saw around free SHS, framed as protect free SHS, because the ruling party's narrative was that if you vote for the NDC, they will cancel free SHS. No matter the number of times President-elect John Mahama had said, I am committed to this, I just believe that we need to review it and address the implementation challenges. So it just looks like it really didn't change the nature of the race, like I believe the ruling party would have hoped.
Okay, right. You want to chip in something, Musa?
Yes, I think the MPP misread the polling data with Free Senior High School.
They did?
Yes. You see, there are two blocks of voters. Those who are at the bottom part of the society, they want the word free element. But those at the middle and upper, they want the quality aspect of the free education. And currently, we know that the quality is poor, but it's available for free. Access has gone up. But the weight of those who were looking for quality outnumber those who are looking for just free.
And even the level of free,
absolute
the quota of free.
Was also an issue.
I spoke to someone who was telling me that, look, it is free, but I'm ending up paying XYZ per week, spending about 500 cedis per week. So for me, the free element in itself is problematic because I get some things here, but then on the other end, I'm paying so much that I don't know whether I went or I came. That was, I mean, a few people expressed that to me.
Yeah, and that's the feeling of the voters. And then you look at the demography of those supporting the free education in its free form. You would realize that there were women and also of certain age group and then of certain income level. And that block of voters were outnumbered, but the rest looking for quality, looking for better kind of things from free education. So I think they probably should have read the numbers very well. And there was no threat of cancellation. So you see, the general voters believed that MPP was lying. Because there hasn't been any statement by the NDC to say that it was going to cancel it. So to vote to protect meant that the other guy has threatened to cancel it. And in fact, that happened in 2020. It rallied support for MPP in that time. I think NDC was taking back foot. I mean, they were really taken by surprise. But this time around, they fought hard to really demystify that cancellation. And that meant that the voters were coming and making a decision on the fact that, look, the guy hasn't said anything. You are lying. And that didn't go well.
Just quickly, on the gender situation, how did the votes pan out in terms of women voting for X or Y candidate, the two of them, and then men?
Let me just take a look at numbers.
Because I think that's one area, when you were speaking about the women and free SHS, it occurred to me, we had not done gender.
In fact, Mahama won across all gender.
So
among male, Mahama got 60%, 60. 132%. Among women, it's a bit closer, 56% to 37%.
56 to 37?
Yes.
I see. Coming back to you, Doc. This one. Have you been contacted by the MPP since the elections?
No.
Because a lot of them railed at you. In fact, a lot of them called you a quack, that you didn't know what you were doing.
I remember people like Kojo Safwa said, anybody who believes Opoku will have a diarrhea on election day. I was wondering how he's doing now.
Okay. Okay, all right. Let me come to you, Doc. I see you're having a good laugh there as well. Were there any major shocks for you in terms of the parliamentary vote and how they panned out? What for you were the surprises? I mean, we could mention Sekondi, we could mention Yendi, we could mention Domekwa Benya, we could mention a plethora of places, even in the Ashanti region. But what were the standout shockers for you?
So for me, beyond just even some of these individual races that you pointed to, again, is the margin, right? If you think of how closely divided the 8th Parliament is, and then you think of what kind of parliament we are going to get in the 9th Parliament, my take is perhaps one, the dissatisfaction in particular constituencies and the wave that was blowing in the rejection of the MPP is one, but also perhaps what voters saw in the 8th Parliament, that the closeness and sometimes the acrimony, the divisions, the chaos was not something they wanted to repeat in the 9th Parliament. That's one of my speculations. And so if they were going to give the mandate to President John Mahama, that they wanted to also make sure that he had the parliamentary...
So that may have accounted for the low levels of skirt and blouse voting.
Yes. So I think those two things account for how the parliamentary election turned out. And if you also notice, both parties in their campaigns began to emphasize how important it is to also vote for the party's parliamentary candidate as well. I mean, there were a few times where I heard statements being made in reference to the 8th Parliament that says, look, if you want the president to be able to do all the things he wants to do, then make sure that you also give him the parliamentary majority that he needs to be able to do that.
I see. There's this interesting bit I all want us to look at. And it has to do with, of course, this was a demolition job. It was, none of us could have forecast that it would be this disastrous for the MPP. I mean, you could go as far back as maybe the start of the 90s and see some of these results come through. But in conceding, the vice president said that they had lost, he and the party had lost the battle, but not the war. And there have been suggestions that he may want to make a comeback in 2028. When you listen to that and you look at these figures, and of course you can't just look at the figures and assume, because if you look at 2016, the gap of 800,000, 2020, the gap of about 500,000. Some would have said that, oh, MPP atia from 200,000. This one was, I don't know. What is your reading of that?
No, I think from what we are hearing, he may be lifting up his boot already for 2028. But he has things to go really against him. He made a case for his presidency that he will bring with him the northern region. And that he was going to bring the Zongo votes. And I think people bought into that. And for that reason, they gave him the nod. I mean, beyond the kind of whipping in line some delegates. The North didn't come. The Muslims didn't come. So when he comes back next time, what will be his argument?
So you're basically saying, and this is a very interesting point you make, you're saying that, I mean, the economic whisk hit, the economy did not go in his favor.
No.
He was supposed to deliver the northern vote. And to be fair to him, over time, the MPP has made serious gains in the northern belt of the country. Gains they were not making under Rawlings. Absolutely. Gains that maybe even under Kufuor they were not making. So you can give him that impact.
Prior to this election.
Prior to this election. But this election, it was
complete disaster, yes. Complete disaster.
Upper West, Upper East, Northern, Savannah, everything was swept away. Apart from Northeast, which he won by narrowly. Narrowly. Then you look at the Muslim vote, and even there, he lost the northern vote in a bigger form. I think 60% or so to Mahama, and he got 30-something%, even than among Christians. So you say these three will work against the second coming of Dr. Bawumia?
I believe so. And also, the polls have shown consistently that he's not strong in the Akan areas where MPP needs to do well in any election. In fact, prior to the polls, he and JM was neck and neck in Akan regions put together. So you could see a bit of hesitation among the Akans. And to be very straight to our Akan people, look, that is a fact, but they won't say that in public. They were hesitant in embracing Bawumia. Would they change their mind next time he comes around? Only time will tell.
I see. I don't know what you think about this situation, Doc, because you can get the sense that the vice president feels, I mean, the vote really went against him, and it did, and against the MPP. Some say it may not necessarily have been so much against him as against the president, but some say it was against both of them. But what do you think? The vice president, a comeback, is it on the cards for you?
From what he said, just like you had mentioned, from what he said in his concession speech, it appears that he would give it some thought and probably try again. If I have already seen, I mean, probably these are some of his own supporters as well, but I saw one or two posts on Facebook where, the person was saying, 2028, we need to go with him again. He would have to look at the results a lot more closely, probe it by whether it's, how it played out across the regions, all of that. But then his own party supporters, right, and what their sentiments would be will be key. If they feel like this one was mainly a repudiation of the Nana Addo government's blueprint for governance and politics, which he suffered it, quote unquote, unfairly, then let the public sentiments simmer, cool down, and who knows, 2028 or thereafter, they would have cooled down enough that they would look at him a lot more dispassionately than they did under the current circumstance. That could make him say, yeah, well, let me give it a shot. Or it could also mean that, look, the defeat is too crushing. It is both a rejection of whatever the party said and whatever message you were offering.
Whatever may be associated with Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia.
Exactly, that it would take a while to be able to extricate yourself. And that's one of the things that the NDC did very well in this campaign. You will notice that anytime they pointed out the issues and challenges under this government, they would always say the Nana Addo Bawumia government, the Nana Addo Bawumia government. So they found a way to link the two together. So it's too early to tell whether he can, one, what he would really do, and two, if he decides to throw his hat in the race again for 2028, that he would be able to make a comeback. It would also depend on who else runs, against him.
Right.
Nana Addo was given the chance 3 different times to be the party's flag bearer. But it may not necessarily mean that he would get those multiple opportunities as well. But I think time will tell.
Doc, what do you think? So do you think the MPP would give Dr. Bawumia another chance? Because Mussa Dankwah has enumerated the bits about the economy, which was baggage for him, the northern vote, which he lost massively, then the Muslim vote, which again, he lost. All these metrics or these matrices, which people felt would work for him, turned against him. Do you think the MPP would give him another chance on the back of some of the infighting we saw, and which led to Alan Trematings, moving out a second time from the MPP? Then, the whole bit about Kennedy Ejapong coming in and all of that. And how much of a comeback would also depend on the performance of the NDC?
All of that. So will they give him a second chance? They probably can. Again, depending on how they make sense of the 2024 election. Some of the sentiments you've already seen is, well, the NDC didn't win, we lost. So if that is their interpretation, then the calculus could be, how then do we get our voters back to go and vote for us with Dr. Bawumia as the candidate? They could make that calculation and say, well, let's give him another chance. But on the back of some of the things that Mussa Dankwah has also pointed out, they could look at the political landscape and say, this is not a landscape that the candidate can surmount and bring us victory. And so we would want to go in a different direction. Then they would have to look at other candidates as well. And you're right, it would also depend on the NDC's performance and the candidates that they pick. Because John Mahama only has 1 term, it makes the 2028 dynamics also very intriguing, right? Because we often hear this narrative about when a candidate is picked, they need time to market the candidate and get the country to know the person, etc., etc. So all of those things would shape. But it will be very interesting to see how the party processes this loss and whether they are willing, based on the lessons learned, what candidates they want to take their chances with in 2028. I mean, would the Honorable Kennedy Ejapong mount another challenge in 2028? And what are the things that he, for example, will point to undermine a case for a second chance for Dr. Bawumia?
What is your take on that? These factors that I mentioned, whether he would likely get the blessing of the MPP one more time, and the relevance of the NDC this time and its actions?
Let's look at the second chance of Bawumia. He's going to face a stiff competition from at least Kennedy. We know we've seen some flies already. Kennedy going to contest. And I think if Kennedy contests and runs against him, I think it will be more fiery than we saw in 2023.
Kennedy got about 30+% of the vote.
Nearly 40%. And without the government machinery behind you, you find it very tough. Because, see, if you look at the demography of MPP delegates, for me, that's where the answer is. The delegates of MPP is about 65% accounts. So that's where the weakness for Bawumia will come from. If the accounts begin to rally behind Kennedy because you haven't delivered enough and that, you'll find it very tough. Very, very, very tough. Very tough. With regards to NDC, I think...
but wait, Do you think Kennedy Japong has that much clout? Because look at his constituency, as in Central, right? He did not contest this time, but the person he blessed, anointed, lost massively.
Maybe a lot of things happened.
And it wasn't to be expected, looking at the margins Kennedy had been getting. You think Kennedy is still that powerful in the party?
Look, there are people you speak to who are MPP, who are floating, who tell you that if it had been Kennedy, it would have been a different story. I don't think it would have won, but it wouldn't have been the way we've seen. But probably the North would have turned out a bit different. But now, what we are seeing here is that I think, tactically, a candidate would have done better in Akan areas and probably maintain MP's performance level in the North and would have expected a tighter race. And indeed, the polls were showing that when you peg Kennedy against Mahama, the gap was smaller than against Bawumia. So the signs were there. Probably people didn't take that very seriously. But this time around, I think they work with data and they will let data drive whatever they do next.
All right. Let's do this. Let me interject. Let us, we'll be crossing over shortly to the Tesano police station, where indeed we'll be having some of that counting, collation done. We'll be crossing over shortly, not immediately, but just get ready for that. We'll take you live there. Jacqueline and Sumaya Boa will be standing by for us over there as we get the scoop on what exactly is happening, because some of the collation could not be done at the Electoral Commission centers. You know, some of these EC centers have been affected, some of them attacked and all that. And so there are issues. And for them, that is where it's going to be done, at the Tesano police station. So looking at all of these factors, it looks like it's going to be a pretty dicey affair. The Constitution in Article 66 is clear. It talks about presidents serving 2 terms and finito.
Yes.
66. 2 terms and you're done. So former President Mahama did the dying embers, not up to 2 years, did the dying embers of the Atta Mills administration, which is why he's also special, because he's going to be the first person to have taken the presidential oath 3 times. That allowed him to do the extra term, which was his first term. And now he's going to do his last term, and that is it. He can't contest anymore. They would then have to find a new candidate, whether it is Professor Jane Nano Pukwajiman or someone else to lead the party. It would be exciting to have a woman flag bearer, I mean, of one of the 2 major parties. But what do you think that could mean in our political dynamics? Before that same question for Doctor, but okay. So before you answer that question, my apologies. Sometimes we have to get a snippet.
That's okay.
Let's cross over to Tesano. Jacqueline and Sumaya Boy is standing by. Jacqueline, what can you report?
Well, currently we are here at the Tesano Police Training School, where the collation of results for Nsawam Adreji is still underway. Well, yesterday my colleague James Aveji was here. He left here around 1 a.m. But the EC promised that the collation of the results would kickstart. at 6 a.m. It's currently 9 a.m. The collation is still ongoing. As you can see behind me, they've counted. If I'm not mistaken, let me say 8 so far. But then we have Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin here, to give us a fair idea of what is happening right here at the, where the collation of results is ongoing. That is for Nsawam Adreji constituency. It's still heavily guarded here. This place is heavily guarded. We've all seen the happenings or whatever thing that has been happening here on social media. But let me move closer to Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin. Now, Honorable, can you please join me here briefly? You've seen all that has been transpiring at the various collation centers. What's your take on it?
Well, let's leave the past behind us and then embrace the new system of transparency and due process. Yesterday, I noticed one thing, that our colleagues on the other side were so uncomfortable with the process. Some artificial delays, some pretenses, and something that was very striking. In the evening, when some of their leaders came here, and they were telling us that, their foot soldiers were amassing outside, and that we should delay the Nsawam Adreji. I said, why? So if they win, it means that we've won all the 4 and that the Afro soldiers will not be happy with them. I said, why? You know, so all of you know that Honorable Anodompe has won and that you are only trying to frustrate him. That is not democracy. And when you talk, they want to threaten you, posting stuff on social media, with Standogbe, attacking me here and there. But me, I'm not perturbed. We are not here to fight. MPP, we don't believe in all that chaos and all. They have won the presidency, that is fine. You've won majority seats, that's fine. But the situation where you want to use some, what I will call some Takashi and Patapa to snatch seats that have been won by other constituencies of that MPP has won, that is unacceptable. They should stop the threats. They should stop misleading their people. They should stop giving certain impression to their people and let them understand that in this politics, it's not a 100% game. You win some, you lose some. We know that all those areas that we had issues with collation, we had our data, and if there is a transparent, peaceful collation system, we would come out victorious. 2, we have commenced an audit of all other constituencies where we lost marginally, because what we realize is that some of our PCs and their collation agent were forced to leave the collation centers. But we are putting that data together. General Secretary is here with me. The Director of Elections, is at work. And very soon, we'll come out and let Ghanaians know what really went on after Dr. Bawumia had conceded. And we realize that a lot of these illegalities took place after Dr. Bawumia's concession speech, where we thought that was going to rather rally the nation around and get us together. They rather took advantage and made our people to flee various collations, and that is where they did the agenda. So we are now going into all of those. Now people are being bold with their collation sheets, their polling station pink sheets, and we are taking our time, because you see, this is a matter of figures. We just can't go publicly and talk, and then when they ask you for your figures, you don't have it. We are taking our time to look at them one by one. Where we have lost genuinely, we will not come and make noise like Dr. Bawumia did. He conceded. But where we think on the evidence available, there has been something untoward, we would petition the EC. After all, a party is entitled as of right to demand for recollation. A party is entitled to demand for recounting and all of that. All right? The law allows that. So we are going to take our time. We would want to be very meticulous. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in due process. We don't believe in attacks here and there. If indeed we follow the law, we would get a good outcome, which would benefit democracy. So I want to assure our supporters out there that we are doing all we can to ensure that the right things are done. And I would want to again call on my colleagues in the NDC that they should allow due process to take place. They have now won power. They should be mindful of their utterances. They should stop inciting the youth. They should stop the chaos, and let us all go through this process. And I also want to commend the police for what they did yesterday, ensuring that security was in place to allow us to go through this thing seamlessly. The EC officials would have to be firm. We need to all get together today to continue today's process and that of tomorrow, and Ghana will win at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Before the team left here last night, it was left with about 85 pin sheets to go. But do you think your candidate is winning?
Let me tell you something. Yesterday night, the NDC leaders were here. I don't want to mention their names. They themselves said that they know Ano has won. The NDC in Sawam constituency executives, they know that Ano Dompre has won. They told us that if the process continues and Ano is declared, their foot soldiers would kill them. I mean, to use a word, their own words. All right? My point is that if you are a leader and you cannot be bold to tell your people the bitter truth, then you are not a good leader. You get my point? Why would you deliberately frustrate a process because you think that you've lost? Look at what they did yesterday. When we were supposed to continue the collation, they said their computers were gone dead. Their batteries were low. We gave them 1 hour to charge their batteries. After 1 hour, they started deserting the place. We were supposed to do it at 1 a.m. Then they said, okay, they want to disperse their people so that we should do it. So we should do it this morning at 6 a.m. We are law-abiding. That is why we patiently follow the process up to this point. So this morning we've started. It's ongoing. We pray that today in Sawam Adwajiri get concluded, and then the Havana Southwest, Techiman South, and other constituencies that have been programmed for today, they go about their collation peacefully. I pray they come. Yesterday, some individuals were threatening. They won't come. They won't do this. It's not proper. They should come. Let's do it. Let Ghana win, and let's continue our democracy. We consider that we are in opposition. We are. All right? So we are going to regroup, re-strategize, plan, and put our house in order, and then prepare for 2028. So they have the executive power. They've won parliament. There's no problem. We are ready to move on. But they should not take our seats that we have legitimately won. That is unacceptable.
Can you confirm the seats that MPP has so far?
We would make that known at the right time.
Well, that is Honorable Alexander Fenyo Marke. We are still here at the police training school at Tesano, where the collation is still ongoing. I mean, there are still other results that would be collated. I can see here that we have Techiman South constituency, and they would also be kick-starting pretty soon. All these tables are here. And also there is another one here. Let me get closer. You also have Obuasi East constituency, and over there is the Insawam Adreji constituency, which is ongoing. Let me get closer to find out the other one, which is on this table over here. I mean, we're hoping that by midday we should get a proper lead as to who is winning in the Insawam Adreji constituency. I wish I could get a closer look, but that is another constituency. So we have 4 more, apart from the Insawam Adreji constituency, making it 5. We have 4 more other constituencies that are expected to converge here to also recollate the results from the elections. Over to you, back in the studio, Benjamin.
And that is Jacqueline Ansomaya-Bois at the police training school in Tesano, bringing us the scoop from there. And she engaged the leader of the MPP caucus, the majority leader, Alexander Afenyo Markin. And that exactly is what happened there. He makes some claims. I don't know what you think about the claims he's making. I saw you smiling in the studio. You can...
You know, these politicians, and when they speak, I think it is fair that the collation is properly done, so that the will of the people will be reflected in the elections. I don't believe in using any foul means to win any seat. I'm quite happy that this is going on. But look, the reality is not on people now, and I think the number they are expecting to get in Parliament was woefully below what they have. And look, if you look at listen to what he said, you could suggest that the concession by DMB early meant that NDC guys were able to just go to police station and then claim seats that they shouldn't have claimed. And I think that would probably be unfair to suggest that. It's not done until it's done. It doesn't matter what your candidate is saying. You must make sure that your seat is protected. If indeed MPP people did that, then that was very bad on their part. Okay.
You were making a comment before I interjected. I don't know.
Yeah, about the who emerged as NDC for 2028.
Right.
I think they should allow fair process. They should allow people to express interest to contest. They should allow free vote. No government machinery should be used to back anybody. We've seen what that could mean to them. Now, one thing about the NDC is that they are resolute when it comes to who they want to elect. Once they allow the fair process to emerge, the delegate will decide who leads them. And I think whoever is elected, people will rally behind that candidate. NDC has advantage in the sense that they don't rely on one particular ethnic group. Their fragmentation of a smaller ethnic group, the accounts are 25%, the Banis are 18%. So you have to have unity of purpose to be able to lead them. And once they decide, I think the party will come behind that candidate.
All right. I want to run through these issues very quickly because after this we are wrapping. I don't know, but the turnout in the election and the entire results, in 2016 or so, there was a cartoon, I don't know whether you remember, with a bus and Mahama driving.
Yes.
People descending with Akufo-Addo and some. I just found that very interesting. It came to mind because it was almost prophetic. I don't know how whoever did that could have seen that this would happen, but that's just by the by. The Napo effect. Napo, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh.
Oh dear.
The Ashanti region was lost badly. What was his effect? I mean, you could just juxtapose that quickly with the effect of Jainan Opoku-Agyeman in the central region. Very quick analysis for me.
I mean, from the onset, the polls were showing that Napo would be a problem for MPP. He was solid among the core base. But these are the base that will come out anyway to vote for you. So to find somebody who would attract the base, I think was really wrong tactical move. They should have gone for somebody who would attract others. And he did not bring anybody outside the MPP base. Okay. Even in Ashanti region, the floating in Ashanti region did not like Napo.
All right. Doc, those same bits to you, and it's a wrap. Dr. Osai Kwapon.
So on the Napo effect, when you go back to Afrobarometer round 9, 2022, voting intentions, if you see the percentage from Ashanti region that was saying would not vote, and then even with the global info analytic polls around the regional breakdowns in terms of potential voter apathy, especially in the Ashanti region, if you look at Professor Smart Sapong's baseline poll in June, when Napo was nominated to be vice president, my read at that point was that, okay, this is a good political move because if you see the warning signs from the Ashanti region, perhaps if the number 2 slot on the ticket comes from the region, it would be appeasing to them, that it would help energize the base. But, in retrospect, it looks like it didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to pan out. As Mussa Dankwah said, it had to be someone more than just, who excites more than just the core of those who would have voted for him anyway. But I honestly thought it was going to, help whatever initial signs of apathy was being seen in the Ashanti region. As to who emerges presidential candidate for the NDC, very interesting to see. One, it will be very interesting to see whether Prof is interested in running in 2028, and also what other candidates would emerge as being interested. And I think we'll just have to wait for
She's 72 now. In 2028, she'll be 76.
Fair point, but again, it doesn't preclude her from, that is if she is something she's interested in. So for me, we would have to wait for time to sort all of that out. Except that, because JDM only has 1 term, I'm sure it's something they would want to quickly, get a sense of, so there's enough time to begin to market that candidate. I mean, if they had 2 terms, you have a lot more time in the event that you are not able to retain your first term, or unseat an incumbent, then you still have time to market the candidate. But the dynamics is different now, so I'm sure it's something they would want to resolve quickly. So we have enough time to market that candidate.
I had to acknowledge this comment. There's no time for reaction, but He says, good morning, I love your morning shows. Just to contribute to the show, I think the impact of free SHS is more on the parents than the students. The reality is different. The person is trying to say that the students who went to vote may not have seen it, but the parents, some of the parents would have seen it as such. I'm so grateful, gentlemen. Mussa Dankwah, Executive Director, Global Info Analytics. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. And congratulations for getting it right this time. For getting it right, pretty much. And we also had Dr. John Osai Kwapong, a CDD fellow. Doc, yeah, that's a bit brave.
Asideni Hokra, anytime.
All right.